Unitic here, October 29th, Tuesday, here in Shenandoah National Park. This is take 3 of my video on chronic disease and anger. And I have 2 failed attempts to record this now, both from technical errors up here with trying to use my camera. So I'm choosing to laugh about it rather than get angry. And hopefully take 3 is the one that's supposed to wind up on YouTube. Anyway, it's a beautiful day here in Shenandoah National Park. Let me give you a quick look at some of the surrounding mountains and the colors. It's pretty colorful. It's been dry, so it's not quite as vibrant as it might be, but I'm loving this dry weather. Springs are still running, so I can get water, and it's been good hiking weather. I'm going to start off with a expression of joy that some friends of mine were kidding me about a week ago when I posted up on Facebook the phrase "great googly moogly" after crossing the 1,000-mile mark and on the trail. And they are old co-workers, not that they're old, but co-workers from my days with United Way, and I used to use that phrase as an expression of good cheer at our weekly rallies when we were trying to recognize good news and get charged up to go out and raise some more money the following week. So I'm going to demonstrate it for you today. I use it on the trail to change my mood from time to time, or just to express happiness. Forefinger, warn you, turn your speakers down. You know I've got a loud voice. Back away from the screen, especially if you've got hearing sensitivity as a Lyme patient. But it's a great googly moogly. And there you go. Use it at your own discretion. So in jest I share that, but in seriousness, it's one technique I use to shift when I'm stuck in a place of anger. And anger's been a lifelong struggle of mine, definitely a theme in my life, and something I consciously chose to try and work on and experience and deal with and be present to out here on the trail. Can't hide from your emotions and your repetitive thoughts out here. Being with yourself all day, 10 hours a day, just walking, beyond the physical challenge of it, there's a huge mental challenge, and you're kind of faced with yourself. And that's kind of hard at times, but it's also very cathartic and therapeutic. Anger can be a very constructive emotion as well as a destructive one. You know, emotion, one definition might be energy in motion, and when we let those emotions move through us, they can be healthy and healing, including anger. When we hold on to them, when we embody them, literally, in anger's case, it produces a biochemical reaction in our body that is destructive and does not help our healing. It literally dumps toxins and destructive hormones into our tissues and can perpetuate chronic illness. I'm not trying to be hypocritical here, because there are justifiable reasons to be angry with this disease. The lying and the self-interest that's going on at very high levels of public health organizations can make you pretty angry. The willful ignorance and, quite frankly, mean-spirited nature of some physicians that we continually seem to run into with regard to this, the fear around Lyme disease in the medical community is expressed as anger by the professionals that patients count on for help, and they can't get the help. They have to go to different states to find the 1 or 2 doctors in their whole region that are courageous enough to deal with this infection. They have to hear the same inaccurate information being put out year after year, in many cases for decades, from organizations like the CDC and the IDSA. Lyme is hard to catch, it's easy to cure, you don't need more than 4 weeks of antibiotics. If you've still got symptoms, your Lyme is magically cured, and you have some other post-Lyme syndrome that you'll deal with for the rest of your life. You know, I get angry on the trail on a regular basis, and a lot of it is directed toward Lyme. I get angry when my short-term memory's so bad I have to continually pull my map out because I can't remember what I looked at 30 minutes ago. When I try to write in my journal and my handwriting looks like chicken scratchings because I have some disconnection now between my motor skills and what I want my hand to do. Happens with my typing. It happens with my speaking sometimes, although that seems to be quite a bit better. I get frustrated when I can't tie a knot that I've tied for 30 years. I can look at a diagram and there's just no way in the world I can translate it into real life and make my fingers do what I see on the page. And those are minor things compared to what some people are dealing with. My new friends, Melissa and Mark Colucci in Pennsylvania, and Melissa's given me permission to mention her story, are dealing with much more dramatic, life-altering outcomes of this Lyme debacle. Melissa now does have multiple sclerosis, the symptoms of multiple sclerosis, a disease to this day that the scientific community cannot declare a definitive cause for. Well, one cause could be undetected persistent infection. Lyme bacteria can attack any part of the body and will if left unchecked. And our medical community, the organizations I mentioned, aren't addressing that. What happens when Lyme is not treated for years and years and years? Well, in many cases, it'll create white lesions on the brain and produce multiple sclerosis. It may not be the only cause of MS, but it's definitely one of them. And Melissa could testify to that, testify that she has to take injections every day to deal with the symptoms of MS because she was misdiagnosed, belittled, pushed away and shunned by the medical community for years, including some of the top diagnostic facilities, the famous ones that you know the name of, that seem to consistently put out the same story to dozens of Lyme patients, literally dozens that I've spoken to personally as well as read about, the same repetitive story over and over again, refusing to look at Lyme as even a possibility. So, yeah, anger, you betcha. But what I want to encourage people to do is don't stay in that anger. There's an old adage that says, directing your anger at someone else and keeping it there is like taking poison and expecting someone else to die. We're the ones that suffer for it, and we're the ones that delay our own healing by staying there. So anger channeled and redirected can be a positive force. We can redirect it toward passion, determination, persistence, toward truth, toward reaching for a higher ideal, toward holding people accountable, including ourselves, and being responsible for our own life experience, and calling organizations and people out when we feel the facts warrant that. And I feel totally confident that there is something terribly wrong happening at the very senior leadership levels of some of these organizations. This corporate medical model that places profits over people is sick, and it is causing people to be sick all over this country. My undergraduate degree is in finance, and the number one premise of corporate finance is maximize shareholder equity. Everything else is secondary. You can be a CEO that doesn't do anything else but maximize that share price. And we've seen them time and again, and you can succeed. You can rise up the ladder, and you can leave people laying in your wake all along the way. But if you don't, in this corporate medical model, maximize that shareholder equity, even in a nonprofit situation, which to me is an oxymoron in the way that we look at nonprofit medical institutions that are anything but nonprofit. It's a system that's producing the same outcome over and over and over again, and eventually you got to ask yourself, is that system really broken, or is it producing the exact outcome it was designed to produce? And that's power and control and profit for a handful at the expense of many. So yeah, that makes me angry. But I'm not going to be able to change that system by just channeling and directing anger at everyone responsible. I'm going to be able to change that system by just speaking the truth and trying to embody a healthy attitude, first and foremost for myself. An illness, a chronic illness and a chronic disease patient has got to put themselves first, or they can't do anybody else any good. So I'm appealing to you, especially my friends in the Lyme community, to not hang on to the anger for people like Gary Wormser, the what some people would call sociopathic chair of the IDSA committee that passed these ridiculous guidelines about Lyme disease that says chronic Lyme doesn't exist and insurance shouldn't pay for anything more than 4 weeks of doxycycline, and if you've still got symptoms for the rest of your life, you've got some nebulous syndrome called post-Lyme syndrome that they've slapped onto this disease. You know, Gary Wormser, I've thought many times what I'd do with 5 minutes alone in a room with him. And for my friends that have known me for 25 years, they know there's a side of me that might not be that healthy for Gary Wormser, even being the skinny middle-aged Lyme patient that I am. But that's not going to help me. And whenever I feel those feelings, I got to find some humor in the situation and try to move beyond that and look for the truth and not just for a culprit. So anyway, that's my take on chronic illness and anger. Anger can be a constructive emotion if applied and channeled and redirected and felt it, not denied, felt and moved through. But it's totally destructive if you hang on to anger every day. It's only going to make you sicker, and nobody wants that for you. No, I don't want it for myself. So I'm out here on the trail, taking about 5 million steps, walking off some anger and figuring out some ways to redirect it. And can't hide from myself out here in those thoughts and those emotions. Can't distract myself from them, you know, even by focusing on the struggle, the physical struggle. The mental struggle and the emotional struggle is still there, and I have to dig into that and be honest with myself and take steps to try and grow as a human being and figure out why and what parts of this I'm responsible for in my own healing. And I encourage you and invite you to consider the same for yourself. Don't run from it. Feel it. Feel the honest emotions, but don't hang on to them, especially the destructive ones. And that's my 2 cents worth for today. Thank you all for watching all these videos and all the positive energy you've been directing to me out on the trail, the care packages, and you know, hopefully in 9 more weeks we'll celebrate together down on Springer Mountain in Georgia. I'm looking forward to taking a day, the next day, and sitting in a soft chair and enjoying indoor plumbing, heat, and as much food as I can possibly handle. And then we'll figure out what comes next. I'm not sure for me. Hopefully there's an inspiration that comes between now and the next 9 weeks of how I can be productive and channel my talents into something that calls to my heart. And this is definitely a topic that calls to my heart. All my best to all of you, and this is Unitic out for today.